A Course in Miracles. Lesson 60. These ideas are for today's review. 46. God is the love in which I forgive. God does not forgive because he is never condemned. The blameless cannot blame, and those who have accepted their innocence see nothing to forgive. Yet forgiveness is the means by which I will recognize my innocence. It is the reflection of God's love on earth. It will bring me near enough to heaven that the love of God can reach down to me and raise me up to him. 47. God is the strength in which I trust. It is not my own strength through which I forgive. It is through the strength of God in me which I am remembering as I forgive. As I begin to see, I recognize his reflection on earth. I forgive all things because I feel the stirring of his strength in me. And I begin to remember the love I chose to forget, but which has not forgotten me. 48. There is nothing to fear. How safe the world will look to me when I can see it. It will not look anything like what I imagine I see now. Everyone and everything I see will lean toward me to bless me. I will recognize in everyone my dearest friend. What could there be to fear in a world that I have forgiven and that has forgiven me? 49. God's voice speaks to me all through the day. There is not a moment in which God's voice ceases to call on my forgiveness to save me. There is not a moment in which his voice fails to direct my thoughts, guide my actions, and lead my feet. I am walking steadily on toward truth. There is nowhere else I can go, because God's voice is the only voice and the only guide that has been given to his Son. 50. I am sustained by the love of God. As I listen to God's voice, I am sustained by his love. As I open my eyes, his love lights up the world for me to see. As I forgive, his love reminds me that his Son is sinless. And as I look upon the world with the vision he has given me, I remember that I am his son. 46. God is the love in which I forgive. A judge sits in a courtroom that was never built. A gavel hangs in the air, but no hand holds it. A case is called, but no crime is named. The only thing real in the room is the light coming through the windows. That light does not decide innocence, because it never accused anyone. Condemnation is a shadow game that needs a lamp to pretend it has power. The blameless cannot blame, because blame requires a story of separation to stand on. Blame needs a me over here and a you over there, plus a debt that must be paid. But innocence is not a verdict. It is the absence of the entire courtroom. Forgiveness, then, is not God changing his mind about a guilty world. Forgiveness is the mind withdrawing belief from the courtroom it invented. It is like waking up and realizing the nightmare never left a stain on the bed. The fear was loud, but it never became a fact. Forgiveness is the mirror that finally stops insisting the smudge is on the sun. It is the reflection of love on earth, because it translates heaven into a language the sleeping mind can hear. And when the mind stops clutching the accusation, it drifts close enough to heaven to feel what was always holding it. Love does not climb down into hell to wrestle demons. Love is recognized when the hand opens and releases the pitchfork it was calling protection. That release is what raises the mind, because it removes the weight that was never required.
God is the strength in which I trust.
Picture a small boat in heavy fog, engines cut, no shoreline visible. Muscles can row, but muscles cannot invent north. Personal strength can strain, but it cannot manufacture certainty. Real strength is not effort. Real strength is orientation. It is the quiet inner compass that does not argue with the ocean. Forgiveness is not a heroic performance where a fragile self grits its teeth and lets it go. That version is still a self trying to prove it can be big enough to be spiritual. God's strength is the opposite of proving. It is the remembering that nothing real was threatened, so nothing real must be defended. When forgiveness happens, it is like the fog thinning just enough to reveal the lighthouse that was always there. The lighthouse does not congratulate the boat for finally earning guidance. It simply shines. That shine is felt as a stirring because it exposes how exhausting it was to navigate by panic. Trust is not optimism. Trust is resting on what cannot fail, and the love that seemed forgotten is not a lover with hurt feelings. It is more like gravity. It does not retaliate when a thought tries to float away. It just keeps holding, patiently, until the mind stops calling resistance independence. There is nothing to fear. Imagine walking through a house at night, convinced it is full of intruders. Every creak is interpreted as intent. Every shadow becomes a weapon. The heart races, not because danger is certain, but because meaning has been assigned to darkness. Then a single switch flips, and the whole threat collapses into coats on chairs and harmless corners. Seeing is not adding something new to the room. Seeing is removing the frightening interpretation. That is why the forgiven world looks safe. It is not a world where bodies behave perfectly. It is a world where perception is no longer weaponized by guilt. Now the deeper part. To recognize in everyone a dearest friend is not sentimental. It is not forcing warmth onto faces or pretending pain did not seem to happen. It is the recognition that what is looked at is not what is there. Every enemy was a mask placed on the sunship by a mind trying to externalize its own self-attack. When forgiveness removes the projector, the screen stops being blamed for the film. The same figures remain in the scene, but the accusation has been pulled out of the eyes. And without accusation, the nervous system of perception relaxes. That relaxation is experienced as blessing, not because the world starts flattering the personal self, but because the mind stops demanding proof of danger. A dearest friend is recognized because there is only one life looking through many windows. What felt like them was always the mind's split reflection, so fear dissolves at the root. A forgiven world is a world where nothing is recruited to testify against innocence. In that world, even a barking dog, a harsh comment, a closed door, a delay, a mistake, leans toward blessing because it no longer carries the assignment, prove separation is real. And what could be feared when the primary fear is gone? The primary fear was never what might happen. The primary fear was the discovery that guilt was unnecessary, and therefore the whole defense system was pointless. 49. God's voice speaks to me all through the day. Think of a song playing under the noise of a city. Traffic blares, people shout, phones buzz, thoughts stack up like unread mail. Yet beneath the noise, a melody is steady, simple, uninsistent. It does not compete. It does not negotiate with chaos. It waits to be chosen. God's voice is not a thunderclap that forces belief. It is the constant invitation to interpret differently. Every moment offers two narrators. One narrator turns experience into grievance, ranking, threat, and lack. The other narrator turns experience into a classroom for release. That is why the call to forgiveness is continuous. Not because punishment is impending, but because peace is always available now. Guidance is not mainly about which street to turn on. Guidance is about which thought to follow. When the mind yields the habit of self-attack, actions become simpler without becoming passive. Feet are led because conflict is no longer steering. And steadily toward truth is not a dramatic sprint to spiritual achievement. It is the quiet consistency of choosing the teacher that does not lie. There is nowhere else to go because every other voice is a detour into the same old loop. The ego's directions always end at the same address. Try again in form. God's voice always ends at the same recognition. Nothing real was lost. 50. I am sustained by the love of God. Picture a lamp plugged into the wall, insisting it must generate electricity. It flickers, strains, overheats, then calls exhaustion being responsible. The truth is simple. The lamp was never meant to manufacture power. The lamp was meant to receive it. Being sustained by love is the end of the private power project. It is the end of the idea that life must be earned, protected, explained, or negotiated. Listening to God's voice is like noticing the plug. The world lights up, not because the world becomes holy by improvements in form, but because perception stops dimming everything with guilt. Forgiveness reminds the mind of sinlessness, the way dawn reminds the eyes what they forgot in the night. Not by arguing with darkness, but by simply being present. Vision given by God is not a special mystical overlay. It is the absence of distortion. And in that absence, remembrance returns naturally. What is sustained does not have to be held up by anxiety. What is sustained does not have to hustle for worth. Love sustains because love is the source, not a reward. And the deepest rest is this: when love is recognized as what is doing the holding, the need to grip anything in the world relaxes on its own.